Welcome, everyone. We've had a little hiatus from our seasonal studies while Presbyterian and I were in Greece visiting with a few parishioners, but for the most part, um, for the last 3 weeks, being a part of the Ionian Village program, which was just wonderful. But we're back, and while we were visiting with parishioners on the island of Kos, we took 24 or 48 hours, 2 days, and the speed boat from the island of Kos to the island of Patmos, and had a chance for both of us, the first time in our lives, to be on the island of Patmos, and we just want to share with you our some of our experience there, the stories that we heard, but also other things. There, when I decided that we do this mini study, I had no idea that there was just so much information about Patmos out there. So we're going to be giving you little glimpses of video clips of books that we've picked up, as well as our own pictures and stories. But let's start with a prayer, and then I'll outline for us all how we'll do these next 4 weeks. Um, just going to read the hymn of the Apologetikion for St. John, ask his blessings to start us off. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, Amen. Beloved apostle of Christ our God, hasten to deliver a people without defense. He who permitted you to recline upon his bosom accepts you on bended knee before him. Beseech him, O theologian, to dispel the persistent cloud of nations, asking for us peace and great mercy. Through the prayers of the holy apostle, evangelist, theologian, and friend, and the virgin and beloved of Christ, John, through the prayers of the great martyr Marina, and of all the saints, Lord, have mercy on us. Amen. So in the email that I sent out to you, the title of this study is Patmos and the Revelation. And our first week tonight, as you saw, if you read in the email, is we're calling it Patmos, Monasteries, Saints, and Inhabitants, because we met some really wonderful people while we were there, and we hope we can cover and do justice to our experience there. The next week, we're going to look at apocalyptic literature in general, on that is throughout Holy Scripture, and kind of tie it in with the apocalypse, the only apocalyptic literature besides some things that Christ had to say that are recorded in the Gospel of Matthew mostly. That'll be the second week. The third week, we're going to delve more fully into the apocalypse itself, and especially that night, I'll be utilizing this book, which was written by a person who's now a metropolitan of Philadelphia, and right, not of the city of Philadelphia, but of the ancient city, one of those 7 cities that the book of the Apocalypse went to. But Archimandrite or Metropolitan Antipas grew up on the island of Patmos. He went to the school that was founded there a couple hundred years ago of Patmiada. He grew up there in the shadow of the cave of the Apocalypse. He became a monk and then ultimately an abbot at the monastery of St. John the Theologian for maybe 10 years. And it was during that time that he did a lot of the work on this book. And then he was chosen by the patriarch and the synod of bishops to become a metropolitan. So now he does a lot more work for the patriarchate, and there's a new abbot. So we'll be reading out of this book as well as one of the sources. Those of you who are in our parish know that we did a whole year and a half of studying the book of Revelation, and a few of those were recorded, especially the visits that we had with Dr. Mary Ford, who teaches the New Testament up at St. Tikhon. So those you can go back to, but we're just going to do an overview on that third week, and then the final week is going to be talking about the world in which we live in today and what the book of Revelation has to tell us. So many people approach the book of Revelation in a misguided way. They think of the book of Revelation as really a crystal ball that just is going to speak to us about the very last things that we're going to see before Christ comes back. And that's not the complete picture, and it's not certainly not why the book was included in Scripture. This book speaks to every generation of Christians because everything that's in it is a description of what the church was, is, and will continue to go through in this world until the coming back of Christ. And it ultimately shows the victory of Christ, and it shows the protection that the church receives and has throughout, will continue to have until Christ comes back again. But his ultimate victory, and then the new heaven and the new earth, and the new Jerusalem coming down from the heavens, which is the kingdom to come that we all hope to enter into. So that's what we hope to cover in 4 weeks, which is why I said I think we're going to take a little longer than our normal hour and 15 minutes or hour and a half. We won't go longer than 2 hours. But especially tonight with so much to cover, I want to just jump right in and ask you to feel free to ask questions if there are anything that in the stories that we've said, shared, or in the pictures that you may see. But I'm going to let some other people do the presenting, and that's I mentioned that in the email as well. So we're going to look at a couple of videos on the island of Patmos. So just to begin with, Archimandrite or Metropolitan Antipas has a really, really wonderful introduction about the island, and I'm just going to read a little bit from the introduction here, and then we'll continue with our own experience. In the heart of the Canese lies an island which is one of the smallest in size, but the greatest in importance among the many Greek islands of the Aegean, holy Patmos. Going back into antiquity, it is difficult to find historical testimonies relating to the life, activities, and economy of the inhabitants of Patmos. The one exception is Thucydides, who lived 460 to 396 BC, who, though sparing in his words, as he always was about places and facts he did not know well, makes a brief reference to the existence of Patmos in Book 3 of his History of the Peloponnesian War. This precious first witness to Patmos's pre-Christian history runs as follows. The general Paches pursued the Lacedaemonians as far as the coast of the rocky island of Patmos. Much later, after 4 centuries, the celebrated historian and geographer Strabo, 64-63 BC to 23 AD, who came from Amasia in Asia Minor, wrote in the 5th chapter of Book 5 of his geography of the island's good climate and fertile soil. Once John's disciple, Prochorus, had written down the historical testimony he heard from the mouth of his inspired teacher, Patmos's historical significance became linked with an important episode in the Christian tradition of apostolic times, making Patmos one of the most important symbols of Christianity. The island was sanctified because it was marked by the grace of God and made the site of the revelatory word given through John's fervent lips and spiritual power. The sacred evangelist and author of the Johannine Apocalypse or Book of Revelation was the only one to hear the words of the divine inspiration as he sheltered in the cave in a rocky cleft, far from the clamor of the world. But he dictated them to his disciple Prochorus, who, quote, like the pen of a skillful scribe, wrote them down, quote, with a trembling hand, and like a lyre whose strings are plucked by God, made invisible and ineffable mysteries accessible to the senses and plainly visible. This is why the word of the book of Revelation reaches our senses and our minds as sublime poetry, as lava from a volcano, as the sound of many waters, Revelation 1:15, as material which cannot easily be slotted into place. The text's poetic coloring and lack of order is an indication of the sincerity of its visionary author. The great church father Hippolytus, Bishop of Rome in the 3rd century, gives us a very clear information in his works about the end of the world and the Antichrist, precisely in the form that our fathers in the church acknowledge and proclaim as law. We see a correspondence between Christ and the Antichrist. We see Jesus Christ has been proclaimed by the prophets as a lion on account of his royal and glorious character. Scripture, in a similar way, calls the Antichrist a lion because he will be oppressive and violent. And he goes through now and he compares Christ and the Antichrist in many different ways. And he goes on to talk about almost all of the other church fathers, because not many did. All of the other church fathers who commented either on the book of Revelation itself or upon some of what is talked about in the book of the Revelation. Saint Athanasius, Saint Ephrem the Syrian, uh, Saint Abba Moses the Ethiopian, Saint Cyril of Jerusalem, Saint John of Damascus, Saint Andrew the Fool for Christ, Saint Nilos the Myrrh Streamer. And in all of it, he kind of places the book of Revelation in this kind of general, it's almost prophecy, but the teaching and the understanding of the church fathers, particularly about the last times. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful introduction. He goes on to speak about the place of the composition, the actual cave, the date the book was probably written, much more about the author, about St. John, and then goes through many more biblical references. And we're going to turn back to this because it's this commentary that we're going to turn to when we're looking at the book of Revelation itself in our third study. He just gives a summary of the meaning of the book and applies it to our circumstance today. And then the rest of the book is his own, it's a translation into modern Greek and into English, with not very many other references. So it's a unique work, and they were selling it at the bookstore at the monastery when we got there. And when I saw it, I said, all right, now I know what I'm going to use when we do our study. But first, I one more preface before Presbyterian and I begin to show pictures and tell our story is that we had studied the island of Patmos all together. Those who were joining us for the series, which we called "We Are Pilgrims on This Earth," and the very last speaker of that study was Tomaida Hodanish. And Tomaida is, along with Dr. Timothy Patitsis, the founders of the Beauty First films. But she had spoken to us about her pilgrimages to Patmos, and it's a wonderful, wonderful introduction. So I'm not going to repeat things that some of you either heard before. You can go back and you can listen to what she had to say about the going as a pilgrim there, and some of the things that she saw and she experienced. Instead, we're going to see the fruit of her work a little later on tonight by watching in its entirety, well, about 27 of the 30 minutes, right towards the end of what we're doing tonight, the film on Saint Amphilochios of Patmos. So now give me just a second to begin sharing with all of you. Let's see. The pictures that Presbyterian and I had taken on our journey. So as I said in the very beginning, Presbyterian and I, let's see, where is it? I've got to move this a little bit. Sorry, everybody. Here we go, my drive. Presbyterian and I, can everyone see that on their screen? The picture?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Because I don't see you, but I just want to make certain that we can hear each other. Presbyterian and I were visiting dear parishioners who live for part of the year on the island of Kos. And as we planned our trip, we had about a week or so before the camp started. We realized that this afforded us a chance to go to see the island of Patmos. And we were hoping, and they were hoping, possibly to come along with us, but in the end, it was just the two of us. And it was an adventure. And President did a lot of the legwork in finding us a wonderful Airbnb to stay in. What you don't see, but if you watch, you go back and watch, or if you remember from before, Tomaida's um, presentation on the island of Patmos, is there's basically two towns. There's on the whole island, there's only some 3,000 inhabitants. Um, and that can be multiplied to 10 times the number of people in the summer months with the number of pilgrims that will come and visit the island every year. But there's the town down below where the port brings in all of the tourists and the visitors and the pilgrims. And that town down below is called Scala. And then there's paths, walking paths that we used that go all the way to the top of the mountain there that overlooks Scala and the town that formed around the monastery. So just a little bit of the history as we look at the monastery up above on the top of the mountain there. The cave where St. John was when he wrote the Revelation, when he was sentenced, exiled to this mountain, to this island, it was completely barren. There were a few others, of course, living on the island, but it was not at all inhabited and in a civilized state. Um, and he was exiled there for that very reason. But if you go to where the cave is, you can understand, and as we do in the pictures, you'll see how this was an ideal place to receive revelation, as an ideal place to sense in its barrenness um, the closeness of God and a presence of the divine. So from that period of time until about 1,000 years later, Patmos was not cultivated or developed a great deal. But in the time of Alex Komnenos, one of the emperors, I forget which one he was of the Alexios, who were emperors, a monk who is Saint Christodolos of Patmos came to him and received the blessing, and actually even he requested if he could be given the island in which to form as a place of pilgrimage and to form a monastery on the top of it. And the emperor not only entrusted the entire island, legally into his care. So it's a kind of a monastery governed island, even though it's a part of Greece. It's very, very unique in the way the inhabitants relate. And it was really the monastery that brought the rest of the civilization there. And so the town up above, known as Kora, that surrounds the monastery and developed over the centuries, developed because the monastics were there. And I'm not going to be able to tell you the whole history, but some of what we're going to show you on the other videotapes will document a little bit more of the history. And it was the monastery and its walls to protect itself against invaders and pirates and so forth that became a draw for the villagers to be able to move as close to the monastery as possible. So whenever there was danger, they could escape into the monastery. And you really have a sense, wouldn't you agree, President, that everybody that's an inhabitant on the island is a part of the life of the monastery and the life of the church.
Yeah. And Hora that that village that is all built around the monastery, like Father said, is very much like a some of the medieval villages that we have seen on other islands too. They're walled cities, well, I'll call it a city, walled village, and all of the streets are very narrow and they're like a labyrinth in there. There are no straight roads or grids or anything. It's all very twisting and turning and narrow and short, and it's to be protected and safe.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's so unique, and it's so beautiful.
Mhm.
It really, really feels unlike any other place in Greece that we've been. We've been in many places where they're kind of the narrow streets, and so many places have monasteries right in the midst of them. But the atmosphere of Patmos is just so unique. So here's a view looking from above down onto the Scala, the city down below in the port. While we were staying there, a huge, huge ocean liner, uh,
Like 3,000 people
3,000
on it.
some people on it visited, and they had many boats that were going back and forth. It was parked right around here in the sea, and these boats were taking the 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 the
Tourists.
the tourists and all of its passengers back and forth, and they were just filling in everything else. Now, this is right kind of in the middle of the entire island. Everything north of the island is hardly inhabited at all, but that's where farmers are. That's where the people live off of the land and make their living. It's from this point and the monastery kind of going south that the monastery has cultivated a little bit more, that where the other monasteries are and where there's seems to be a more populated area. Um, Here, we're just walking our way. So when we arrived, we found our Airbnb. We had a little bit of time. We realized we could make it up to the monastery, and we got a taxi for our first trip up. And here we're just finding our way into the monastery. So you see the sign pointing the monastery on the right, and the windmills, which you'll see pictures of later on the left there, and to other places there. So here's a little bit more of the view from up above. Um, we really didn't know what we were getting into, um, but the person who rented out one room within 3 or 4 rooms, which in their larger home, Kyria Maria was her name, was just a very, very dear person, and she even did a favor for me afterwards, and she
Mm.
goes up to the monastery regularly, and you get a sense that that's how almost all of the inhabitants on the island are. They just live so close to the monastery. So here's some more views as we're walking around the top. There's a view that Presbytera took of the windmills that were kind of a next mountain over.
Those steps are coming up to the entrance.
These are the steps leading up to the entrance of the monastery. And here we are entering into the grounds of the monastery. And these were steps that we took that led up to a second floor where the museum was of the monastery. Now it's the monastery has some of the best artifacts, historical ecclesial artifacts anywhere in the world,
Mhm.
and it because of its association with Saint John the theologian, um, and Saint Christodoulos, who founded the monastery, very much impressed this upon the rhythm and the character of the monastery. The monks there are experts in the preservation of books and of many other things.
And they speak to that in the film that we're going to see later, I think. And the one, yeah, in the film. And they have a beautiful library apparently where they do restorations of manuscripts and things. And we weren't privy to any of that this time. Um, but the museum was amazing. It reminded us a little bit of the one at St. Catherine's
Yeah.
in Mount Sinai. You kind of feel like you're in a James Bond movie, is the best way I can put it.
Right, you
You're
walk
in the
through
middle
this.
of all this, ancient monastery and, so devoid of technology and everything. And then you go into these museums and they're ultimate first.
Smithsonian,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, the best.
Yeah, humidity
Yep.
control and the lighting and the backgrounds and everything is just incredible. And the things that are preserved in there were magnificent, but we couldn't take any pictures.
We were not allowed a single picture, but the video that we're going to show will show you something more.
Yeah.
So
Ted,
yes,
I just wanted to let you know, Leslie Kristen is trying to join.
I
I'm just
I
letting you
just
know.
saw it popped up on my screen
Okay,
to admit two more. Thank you, Lex.
sure.
So
It's
this is
just a
still up
random
above.
photo in the
Yeah.
dining.
When we went back downstairs, we didn't see any of the monks, and I asked about the abbot, and there had been two funerals that day of people close to the monastery, one of them on the island and one of them off the island. So I guess a number of the monks were just not there. I did finally see one monk, and I just kind of waited outside the door. He was talking to another monk, maybe in a part of the monastery, people weren't normally going to. But I was playing the priest card with my robe and kalamafki on, and he did come out, and he mentioned to me that the abbot was missing. But there was somebody else who, in the end, we found out was a guard downstairs who was really helpful. And he took me through the churches and my pictures. I have pictures of the inside of the churches and the renovation that was done. But that's going to be on the video that we're going to show as well.
Yeah, and Father's saying he took me into the church and I took pictures. He's speaking in the singular because I wasn't allowed in. None of the pilgrims, none of the women. No, the church was kind of roped off. So
Yeah.
so that was a special blessing. That was great that Father got to go in and see and take some photos. Yeah.
We venerated, there was a place where we both could go to venerate the relics of Saint Christodolos, the founder of the monastery, built in the 900s. This is the refectory. This is where they would eat. And you can see it's all carved marble. And we walked around in there and just took some pictures. You can see the ancient mosaics on the wall.
Yeah. And those icons leaning up on the cabinet are all being restored slowly, slowly.
So I think we're going to stop here because what we did after that is we just walked around a little bit more in Chora before we went back down and for the end of the day to get something to eat. And uh, at this point, I'm going to stop the share of this particular our slides, and I'm going to start a share instead of one of the videos that I have lined up. So hang in there with me as I get that. So as I mentioned, this is not made by an Orthodox group, but Exposa Travel did this, but you can tell an Orthodox Christian wrote the texts that go along with this. So hopefully, when this plays, everyone's going to be able to hear it. Let me just go back. If you can't hear, please let me know right away, and then I'll start it over again.
We can hear it. I can hear
Okay.
it.
And the music in the beginning and the end is a little funky,
Yeah.
but
Starting.
Ημών ελεησόν με ο Θεός κατά το μέγα έλεος σου και κατά το πλήθος των νυκτυρμών σου εξαλείψον το
I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. I, John, who am also your brother and companion in tribulation, and in the kingdom and patience of Jesus Christ, was in the isle that is called Patmos, for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ.
Patmos, an island in the Aegean Sea, crowned by the imposing walls of a centuries-old monastery. An island with about 3,000 inhabitants and 37 monks. A single monastery with more than 600 chapels. This is a holy place indeed for Christianity. 1900 years ago, the Apostle John stayed here as an aging exile. This is where God spoke to him and where he saw the destiny of the world in a vision. This is where he dictated the last book of the Bible for his disciple Prochorus to write down.
This is
The
from the
book of
top of the
Revelations,
monastery.
the
You can
Apocalypse.
walk around and see this sign.
Η Αποκάλυψης είναι
The revelation to John is a contentious subject. It is a stumbling block to trip over.
This is the new abbot of the monastery. So about 9 years ago, I guess, when this was made, because this filming happened during the time that he was installed as the new abbot. And the latter part of this videotape is all about that whole experience and an ordination of one of the young boys who had become a monk there, and now he was being ordained as a deacon and then as a priest, which is extremely moving part of the whole tape. But this is the abbot who gives an explanation, exegesis of the history and some other things that you'll see they keep coming back to him to speak.
Over before banging your head against a brick wall.
τα πρόσωπά τους και τα χέρια τους. Ερχόμενος κανείς.
If you come to Patmos, you can sense, you can smell from miles off that this is a holy place. Patmos is a mystery that must be experienced close to God. The senses must be filled with holy incense to be immersed in the mystery of Patmos.
Γεμίσουν οι αισθήσεις του λιβάνι θεϊκό για να μπορέσει να ζήσει το μυστήριο που ονομάζεται Πάτμος.
On this slope, at the foot of the monastery, is the cave where John had his vision, the chapel of the Apocalypse. Revelations, the most mysterious book in the Bible, which tells of the end of the world and of Judgment Day, a book of hope and of horror.
The number one food for
Oh,
regular
no.
BMs, huh? Okay, let's see.
Fastest
Sorry.
way to clear out stuck poop is by adding more fiber to
Can people hear?
Και ο πέμπτος άγγελος εσάρπησε.
And the fifth angel sounded.
Is everybody still hearing the video?
I do, but it's a little fainter, I think. I have my volume turned all the way up, but I don't know why.
Okay,
Maybe it's because my
yeah.
AC is on.
I can
Sorry.
hear.
I'll bring up the volume a little bit more.
Thank you so
And I
much.
saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power.
Έχουσιν εξουσίαν η σκορπή της γης.
So there's actually two churches side by side. The first one is the cave, and the other one is a church dedicated to Saint
Ο χώρος
Anna
αυτός είναι
that
Like the Sinai, Patmos is a holy place where incomprehensible things happen. In the Sinai, the Lord spoke to Moses, and here the Lord spoke to John, his beloved disciple. The most important thing is that this is where the future of humanity was revealed. In 95 AD,
So as I was saying, on the left-hand side here, over on this side, is a church that was added onto the cave that comes out from the cave. And that was built, dedicated to Saint Anna, because there was an empress who was Anna, or the mother of an emperor who was Anna, who dedicated the funds and everything for the building of that. But it's over here is where the actual smaller church is, the altar
over here.
behind here. And this priest is about to explain to us everything that you see this priest monk from the monastery what you see in the cave.
The Emperor Domitian, a persecutor of Christians, decided to banish St. John to Patmos, which the Romans used as a place of exile in the 1st century. It was as such an exile that St. John came to pray here in this cave. The Revelation to John, the last book of the New Testament, was written down right here. Its main theme is Judgment Day and the battle of the Lord and the Antichrist, which will eventually be won by the Lord. The revelation concerns all kinds of people all over the world nowadays because much of what it says has started to happen.
As pragmatiunde.
This is the spot where St. John rested. He used this recess as a support for his head. And that's where he leaned when he wanted to get up, because he was a very old man, already 100 when he arrived here. This is where his disciple Prochoros wrote down what the saint dictated to him. This crack here is evidence of the Lord's appearance. The rock split when his voice rang out. The crack starts at this point and ends here, where it's divided into 3 as a symbol of the Trinity of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And I turned to see the voice that spoke with me. And being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks, and in the midst of the 7 candlesticks one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his voice as the sound of many waters. And he had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in its strength.
Without John and the Book of Revelations, the small island of Patmos in the Aegean would have drifted into virtual obscurity.
Museum.
So this is
Now
inside the
tourists
museum that
flock
we
to
weren't
the
allowed to
island,
take pictures
swelling
of.
its population to 20 or 30 times the normal number during the summer months. The harbour is jam-packed with cruise ships, awaiting their turn to disgorge passengers for a brief visit to the monastery.
Ο μοναχός από την αρχαία εποχή που υπήρξε,
Ever since they became servants of the church many centuries ago, even if they lived in the desert, monks have lived and prayed for humankind. Just as much as monks who have lived and live now among the people. They have always accepted the messages and the concerns of the people as well as their joys. That is what our monastery is about today.
και τις ανησυχίες του κόσμου. Ζούνε τον πόνο και τη χαρά του. Μέσα σε αυτή την έννοια
We still have the services and prayers, receive the people many hours a day, and are confronted with cultural developments. Naturally, we too experience the unrest of modern-day people and so-called progress.
τον κόσμο. Και επιπλέον δέχεται όλη την εξέλιξη του
Now,
πολιτισμού.
certainly progress can help take people to their salvation, but it can also lead to their downfall.
Και ο σημερινός,
But
η σημερινή
by placing our hope in
εξέλιξη
God,
του πολιτισμού
the monastery hopes to put up the best possible resistance
μπορεί να τον
against
οδηγήσει
evil.
στην καταστροφή του. Έχοντας όμως την ελπίδα της στο Θεό, πιστεύει ότι διατηρεί τις καλύτερες αντιστάσεις προκειμένου να παλέσει προς το κακό.
We can see the monks being called to their service, a worship service, the traditional beating of the talandun, as it is throughout, all of the Orthodox world.
Το μοναστήρι αυτό είναι ζωντανό σε αντιπαράθεση
This monastery
με το φαινόμενο
is
που επικρατεί όχι
alive,
μόνο στην Δύση,
unlike
αλλά
many of
και
its counterparts,
σε εμάς,
not
στην
only in the
Πάτμο.
West, but
Η
also here in
ιδιαιτερότητα
the
της
East.
Πάτμου είναι ότι χαρακτηρίζεται από μία
The
προσκυνηματική
special thing about
εικόνα
Patmos is that
και
it is a
καλύπτεται
place of
σε αυτή
pilgrimage,
τη σημερινή
and
κοινωνία.
monks are now being asked to develop the virtue of hospitality in addition to those of
Να
humility
αναπτύξει
and
περισσότερο
obedience.
και το χάρισμα της φιλοξενίας. Η μονή
The monastery is a metaphorical ship, a ship that has sailed through the centuries and weathered all the historical and social storms it encountered on the seas. It has survived until this day and hopes that it will continue to survive until the second coming of Christ.
Είδα ότι θα φτάσει μέχρι και την ημέρα της Αναστάσεως.
To the main church. All of that iconography
A
has since
monastery
been
and an
cleaned
island
up,
that
and
must be
it's
steered through the storm
just
like a ship
beautiful.
until the next generation can take over at the helm. That is how the monks of Patmos have seen their task for centuries, with the walls of their monastery offering protection against raiders and pirates. With wisdom and tact, they steered the island through dark centuries of Turkish oppression. The school that founded the monastery produced many leaders, and the island made a major contribution to the Greek fight for independence, even though it long remained under the Turkish flag.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, the Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us.
If present-day tourists constitute a threat, the monastery is dealing with it astonishingly well. It manages to reap a tidy profit from the flood of foreigners, allowing it to add to the treasures it has collected over the centuries. A library full of precious works, a treasure trove of splendid miniatures and icons.
I would love to have been in there.
Yeah.
Nowhere else in Greece does so much effort go into the restoration of old church treasures, and the monastery has first-class restoration facilities at its disposal.
Η υπομονή
So I'm going to stop the share of that here. What continues on afterwards is it's really interesting, but we just don't have the time tonight. Is to see how they preserve ancient manuscripts, to see the ongoing scholarly work that the monastery continues to do. People will come from all over to Patmos, who are scholars and so forth. And the monastery not only restores books, but it restores just about everything, that is come through the test of time and survived until today. And there's a wonderful segment of where the person who's newly ordained as a deacon, his work for a while as a monk was just to go down to this old church that had these amazing iconography of the Revelation, and restoring the church, restoring the ground all around it, starting a farm again. It was quite wonderful. The whole end of it is about the installation of the abbot and this ordination of this other monk, and how close the people are. And I'm tempted to just wanted to jump to the end to see the tears on their faces, to see the deep feeling that the people have attending the installation of the new abbot and the ordination of the monk. And you really get such a profound sense from the end of this of how close the people tend to live. But Presbyterian and I had a little bit of that experience ourselves.
Did you provide the link so people can watch that?
I didn't share the link in this, but I will. I will with my next message that I go out. So you can get this one, and you'll also be able to. I think for the other one made by Beauty First on Saint Amphilochius, you're going to have to purchase that. But because I've purchased it, I'll be able to show that. So any questions? Anything that people have seen so far? I think I'm going to want to take us back to some of the photos that Presbytera had made. And
Father, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me or can you hear me?
Yes.
The cave. I got a little confused. Is the cave, it's not by the monastery because it's down the hill?
It's about a 20-minute or 10 to 15-minute walk downhill
Okay, okay.
from
All
the
right, thought
monastery.
so.
It's
Okay.
like it's about the same distance almost by car because the path goes, the old stone path that you can walk on basically goes straight down by where the cave is, while the cars have to, because of the terrain and so forth, have to take a more windy route. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so we went at some point on that video down to the cave and then came back up to the main monastery. The
Oh,
monks in
wow.
the monastery also care for the cave. Okay, so I just have to get out of this to go back to let me stop the sharing again. And I'm not certain when I open this up why it's not showing me I'm sorry, everybody. I have to find okay. I have to find the other. Maybe this will help me. Yeah, there we go. All right. So we're going to go back into the pictures that we took because the next day, the rest of that day, President Ted and I walked a little bit more around above in Quora and then made our way back down to where we were staying. But at one point, I had actually forgotten something. We had visited this other beautiful church, Pania Eleusa, and we had to walk back in order to find that. And then on our way back, we came across a woman, one of the residents of Cora, whose name was Anastasia
Eleftheria.
Eleftheria.
Yeah, I towered over her. So you can imagine how short she was.
Oh my
And
goodness.
Yeah.
she just insisted that we come with her to open up the St. George Church. And at first, President was a little hesitant because she thought, oh no, are we going to have to walk all the way back to where we were, Pania Eliuso? But it was literally around the corner. And this is her job. And she's lived there her whole life. And she never married, but she is the caretaker for this little church. And we went in. It's a church dedicated to St. George. And the other icons that were in the narthex were Saints Constantine and Helen. And we venerated the icons and lit candles and just talked to her about her life. She had fallen recently. She's in her 90s.
Well, I think you asked her how old she was.
All
And
right.
and she looked at us and she said, "Well, how old do you think I am?" And we both kind of politely guessed and she nodded her head. I don't think she knew how old she was. That was like the feeling that I got. She was the most precious little woman. And I even wrote in my journal, that she had this huge hump on her back. She was missing a finger. Her toes were all gnarled. Her hair was a mess. And she was so beautiful. I mean, she was so beautiful and just
childlike,
so present. I think her whole world was between her house and 2 blocks away, the church that she cared for every day. And it was just such a gift. It's so unusual being with her. It was really, really special. Yeah.
So here's the path on the way back down to as you're leaving the quota and the monastery. This is the stone part of it, but then soon the path goes from the stone into these rougher stones, as you can see. And these have been around, 1,000 years, this path. And Tomaida talks about walking on these paths and thinking, who else, how many saints have walked on these paths? Did Saint John the Evangelist himself come up, a similar path?
Yeah. And it is the path that goes from Scala, the town, the port town, all the way up. And our Airbnb was like 5 houses away from the beginning of it.
Yeah, it
So
was
that was how
perfectly located.
we walked. And Father, the 2 mornings that we were there, Father left at like 6 and walked up to the cave for liturgy, and I just followed an hour later, so it was so close.
On our way down that night, a little bit further down the path, let me move this out of the way. A little bit further down this path, I looked back and you had such a wonderful view of the monastery and the cave and where the way the light was shining. I said, "Oh, I have to take a picture." So I pulled my camera out of my pocket and took some pictures and then put it back in. And only later that night did I realize I had lost my kumbaskini. The next morning, walking up to go to the liturgy and just praying to God, please. I thought maybe it had come out of my pocket when we were at dinner or somewhere else. There, right along the path, was the kumbaskini where I had taken the picture, and it all came back to me, and I was so grateful to God.
It's just beautiful. Oh my gosh.
So this is the entrance of the cave again. This is our going in. Well, this picture is back up above, but we do have pictures of the cave. Maybe these are pictures from. No, this is the next morning. Right?
Well, I don't know when it is, but here's the cave and
Oh, yeah.
the
Here,
school and the monastery.
right. And this is the footpath that we walked along. So this was the entrance.
Evangelismos.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna stop right here. After we attended liturgy in the cave, which was just such an experience itself because it started when I got there. There was only an abbot of one of the monasteries on the Holy Mountain, the new Esphigmeno abbot and brotherhood was there with 4 or 5 other monks that had come, and he was the chief celebrant that morning. And it was the Father Isidros, who's the monk that's been doing this, selling the liturgy every day in the cave for 30 years. He had so much hair and beard, his kalamafki wouldn't even fit on his head. And um, and he was a bit gruff, but there was something so just real about him, and so like he's weathered it all, and the grace of God just sustains him. And as the liturgy went along, it was Presbytera showed up, and it was lovely and it's beautiful
Yeah, I
in the
was there
cave.
before liturgy
You started,
started,
yeah.
but it slowly started to fill up.
And then they arrived. Busloads of people just started walking into the liturgy and causing such a commotion. And then I understood more fully why the priest is kind of the way that he is, because you just have to endure so much. And one of the older ladies leaned against one of the candelabras there, the sand in a big circular stand, pushed and fell over and pushed the can stand over, and we had to stop our liturgy for a moment. And she was on the ground, and somebody else comes along, a woman who like was telling people where to stand and what to do, and she was sweeping up all the sand. And
It was just a
it was
commotion.
less
Yeah.
than the most reverent experience, and another way so real in the midst of this holy and sacred place. So after that, we made our way. We actually got a taxi and made our way to another one of the monasteries, and that's the monastery of the Evangelismos, the Annunciation. This monastery was started by Saint Amphilochios of Patmos and built in the 1900s. So there's the icon of Saint Amphilochios at the entrance of the monastery, and here we are as we entered into the monastery. Just beautiful, and you'll hear in the video that we're about to watch on his life um, that the so much of Patmos was still barren, but he was had such a love for the environment and conservation and the restoration of the natural the land, that he would give penances to people of planting trees, and he led to this whole rejuvenation of the actual topography and the physical landscape on the mountain. on the mountain, on the side of the mountain where the monastery is, and on all of Patmos. So these are just views from within the monastery, and this is the cemetery. So after hearing a little bit of a tour inside of the church, we decided to walk down to this cemetery where Saint Amphilochius was buried. His relics were no longer in there, and one of the members of our community, Joanna Petris, she had grown up on Patmos.
No.
No, she grew up in Kos, but an aunt of hers had become a nun at this particular monastery convent started by Saint Amphilochius. And so we thought, oh, maybe we
Well,
could find
and as a little girl, she would go and spend some time each summer with her Thea,
Yeah.
the nun at this monastery. So, yeah, we thought we would go and see if we could find her grave.
At the grave of Saint Amphilochius, instead, we ran into this woman, Joanna Knight. And Joanna Knight has been going there for many, many years and is from England and is a part of something that was started by Metropolitan Kallistos Ware. Do you remember the name of you read it just a little while earlier?
I don't have access to it right now.
But as we know, our patriarch Bartholomew is the Green Patriarch, and he supports environmental efforts. And Metropolitan Kallistos on the island of Patmos has started a kind of organization and a foundation for the increased awareness of our need as a church to embrace the asceticism involved in living a life preserving the environment, and that this isn't, Joanna would say to us, this isn't something that's ancillary. This is the central, this is the heart of our life and our world today, you know, with everything that's happening in the world. So even after Metropolitan Kallistos died, she's continued the work. She mentioned to us she's on the phone with the patriarch every week, and she was there praying very intently by the grave. And this is what she does, and what others do. They just go to his grave and they pray. And it was at that moment that we walked up. So we began speaking to one another. And one of the things that she started talking about was a desire to bring others there, and even particularly young adults and young people to see and to get more involved in all of this. And while we were talking, it just came to me that this would be a perfect OCF Real Break trip to go on pilgrimage to Patmos and maybe even some of the other islands that are close by, but also to participate. And they have a dormitory that they've already built for people, but
it's a retreat center.
It's a retreat center, yeah. And she looked at it as a sign, like her prayer was answered with us just showing up and talking to her. So I really hope to be able to follow through with the people that I know in the OCF. And maybe that's something in the future I'll be able to participate in, and we'll be able to get other youth from our church and, you know, those that participate in the OCF to go on pilgrimage there. And then we went up into the nuns were kind of looking for us, and they said, "Oh, we've prepared a little charisma for you in the guest house." And we walked into the guest house. This priest who's been there, he knew Saint Amphilochios from the school, the Patmia, the school, and you're going to hear from him and others on this video that I'm going to play for you now. And this will be more of the history of this monastery and the life of Saint Amphilochius. Tamaida gave us a tiny, tiny little glimpse. We weren't allowed to record it at the time, but now that it's public and you can purchase it and you can watch it, we have the blessing to show this film as well. Can everybody hear it?
Yes.
Είναι σαν να τον έχουμε γνωρίσει και σαν να τον βλέπουμε γύρω-γύρω εδώ στο μοναστήρι. Και σήμερα στη γιορτή αισθανόμουν πολύ ότι είναι μαζί μας.
Είμαστε περήφανοι για τον Άγιο.
Η καρδιά του επιλέγεται όλοι να γνωρίζουν τον Χριστό, φίλους Χριστού.
Το γέροντας δίδαξε την αγάπη, πολύ αγάπη, πάρα πολύ αγάπη.
Father, I think it ended.
Yeah, it did. I'm trying to get out of the.
Oh, okay.
I closed the here we go. I closed the screen. All right.
You need a tech guy for these.
Yeah, it's not my specialty. So you see why we wanted you to see the movie, right?
I
It
think
was
it was
very
very,
moving.
it was amazing.
That's Patmos. It's monasteries, some of them, saints, a couple of them. Its inhabitants. It was just such a blessed place for us to be 48 hours. Yes, so
I had the opportunity to go back to St. Nectarios, his monastery in Egina. So I feel very connected now to this. I want to make sure I'm saying his name right.
Amphilochios. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that, Father?
Amphilochios.
Chios?
Amphilochios. Like Chios. Like Chios.
Okay, Chios. Okay.
Yeah.
Amphilochios. Okay, got it. I had no idea. I didn't know he existed until now.
Helen, had you seen that movie before?
No, no.
Yeah.
So it is. I'll share the information about how to purchase it. It's not much, whatever it is to purchase it. And then you can continually just go back to the link that they send you, like I did, to watch it again. In the meantime, Beauty First has put out now a couple of more movies, and they have a monthly newsletter. I just got another edition today that they send out. And it's great to support the work that they're doing.
And it's just remarkable that we live in a time where we can see movies about saints and everything. And when we went to St. Nectarios with the camp students, you know, many of them hadn't seen the film The Man of God either,
Yeah.
and we're excited to go home. You know, for those of us kind of who are visual learners, you know, it's helpful as long as they're done very carefully. Yeah.
Just we live in a time where, you know, there's so much of the world, of the fallen world, is just so readily available. But in the midst of all of that, I was saying at the vigil for St. Paisius that I think St. Paisius is the first saint in history who probably has a television series about him where, you know, there's 2 seasons already of episodes of his life, you know, and it's in Greek, but it's in English footnotes, and
Good.
it's just so good, just so good. So 8:40, it's actually earlier than I thought, but we'll kind of finish up here. Next time, as I said, we'll take a look at the apocalyptic, just a survey of apocalyptic literature in all of Scripture, and to see how closely related to all of that is the apocalypse of St. John. And I'll read more from the book about just the manner of its writing, and it's really there's so many wonderful points in here. He one of the things he talks about is it's revelation in the environment. Our natural environment, according to the biblical sources, has clearly been constituted by God. Creation has been willed by God, and according to Genesis, is the result of a series of acts of the divine will which provoke corresponding creations. Genesis begins with a general and categorical statement: in the beginning, God made heaven and earth. The natural environment is older than humanity, since the creation of the world, which is in a broad sense constitutes the human environment, preceded the human race. I'll skip down a little bit. In the course of the millennia, human societies have experienced natural disasters of varying magnitude, which has resulted at times in the near disappearance of the human race. By the dawn of the 21st century, the possibility of the total biological self-destruction of humankind has for the first time become a real issue. We are witnessing for the first time the progressive reversal of nature's regenerative powers and productive capability. We are now faced with the sure prospect that hanging over our heads like Damocles' sword is the biological extinction of humankind and the inevitable end of our civilization. And he's talking about that as something that we understand from the book of Revelation as well. You know, certain prophecies about what will happen on the earth. So it's all connected, and may we have Saint Amphilochius and Saint Christodolos. Those of you who know Euronymous Gavrilia, who was recently canonized as saint, she was a nun. She was tonsured at that monastery of Evangelismos. We have all of these saints of Patmos, back to Saint John and Prochorus. May they intercede for us all. Help us to keep the faith in these times. All right. If I don't have any other questions or comments, I'll say closing prayer. Who can recount your greatness, O Virgin? For miracles flow and healing springs forth from you. You intercede for our souls, as the theologian and friend of Christ. I think I have of icon of Saint Amphilochius here too. The glory of monastics and adornment of righteous priests, fatherly protector of orphans and defender of all the poor, wise teacher of the islands and delight of Patmos and Lepso and all the rest, Amphilochios the new, now let us extol, crying aloud with boundless joy, glory to Christ who glorified you, glory to him who has crowned you, glory to him who works through you to grant healings of every kind. Lord, through their prayers and of all the saints, of your most holy mother, of Saint Marina, the great martyr, whose memory we commemorate tonight and tomorrow, help us to continue our journey and how to devote our lives to you, even a fraction as much as they all have, that we too may be joined with them in your heavenly kingdom when you come again for us all. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Night, Father. See you
Good night.
tomorrow.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I can't wait to watch it again on YouTube or when you post it.
Yes, thank you.